Welcome to the Sounds of Resistance channel. The Ukrainian-Russian war has come to such a point that the Russians themselves began to suffer from all the attacks they had planned. The Russian troops who could not get past the defense network built by the Ukrainian armed forces started to give back the Ukrainian lands they occupied one by one. This incredible process is followed with amazement by all the states of the world. The Russian leader could not avoid being disgraced by the Russian media and the entire world agenda due to the unsuccessful attack attempts of the Russian army in Zaporizhia. The Russian army fired 5 cruise missiles from Su-35s during the day to create an atmosphere of fear and tragedy for the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian army. This shocking news made its impact felt for a long time as a result of the shooting down of all Russian cruise missiles by the Ukrainian Air Force like they were hunting crows. The other day, Putin's irregular army targeting Zaporizhia in the Dnipropetrovsk region of Ukraine launched an airstrike with Russian Su-35 airplanes. These attacks, which were launched suddenly by the Russian Air Force, initially made the inhabitants of this region quite uneasy. While the sound of Russian warplanes caused local people to flee the area, Russian Su-35 warplanes began to bombard the Dnipropetrovsk region. Ukraine's Eastern Air Command passed an emergency announcement as soon as the attacks began. Ukraine's Eastern Command reported that Russian Su-35 warplanes fired 4 Kh-59 air-to-Ukraine missiles. In addition, 2 Kh-59 Russian cruise missiles were shot down in the skies of Odessa. Then, within the heroic Air Force of Ukraine, which immediately started preparations, 1 Russian missile in Zaporizhia Oblast, 1 Russian missile in Kryvyi Rih region in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and 2 Russian missiles in Snelnikove region in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast shattered on the go. In addition, Odessa Air Defense Systems shattered 2 X-59 missiles fired by Russian Su-35 warplanes over Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force managed to shoot down 6 Russian missiles in one day and dealt a great blow to Russian Air Force. Ukraine may have set a new daily record by shooting down 6 Russian cruise missiles in one day. Known as the Russian Kh-59 or X-59, the missiles are air-to-surface short-range cruise missiles. It is not easy to hunt X-59 missiles with their short range and 0.8 Mach speed. But the Ukrainian Air Force has mastered destroying all kinds of powerful equipment, missiles, and aircraft of Russia. The Russian Air Force was shocked by Ukraine's abrupt response to these airstrikes. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, was once again disappointed in this air attack plan he embarked on. The Russian leader, who is afraid to take a step now, has not been able to draw a successful result from any other operations he has carried out for a long time against the Ukrainian army. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, who saw the bottom in the world political arena, opened the doors of the Ukrainian army's eastward advance towards Donetsk as a result of this unsuccessful attack. The Ukrainian fighters who are currently besieging Liman continue on their way and prepare for the great conquest. The heroic soldiers of Ukraine, who not only overcame but shattered all obstacles in their way, are advancing at full speed towards Crimea. Neither the Kremlin nor Putin nor any other allied country standing by Russia can resist this advance of Ukraine. Zelensky's lions want to take back the Crimea, which was considered the beginning of the war for Zelensky after they also captured Donetsk. Therefore, the Ukrainian army began to give a lot of weight to the rescue operations in the Donetsk region. The heroic Ukrainian army, which does not only operate in the Donetsk region, also takes the stage in the central and southern fronts of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force, which devastated Russian leader Vladimir Putin, managed to repel Russian air attacks, this time in the port city of Crimea, Odessa. The glorious Ukrainian Air Force, which continues to run from victory to victory, succeeded in destroying the missile attacks of 2 Su-35 Russian warplanes organized by Russia in the air. Odessa Air Defense Systems shattered 2 X-59 missiles fired by Russian Su-35 warplanes over Ukraine. As the Russian Air Forces attacked, the Ukrainian Air Defense Systems now stopped these attacks in the air. These defeats which left Vladimir Putin helpless, make the Ukrainian heroes a star and bring the Ukrainian nation one step closer to a great victory. Also this week, 3 Iranian-made Shahed 136 kamikaze unmanned aerial vehicles sent by the Russian Air Force to the Odessa region were turned into fireballs by the Ukrainian air defense systems and destroyed. The war policy followed by Russia also contributed to the progress of the Ukrainian army. Let's take a quick look at how. Now, you remember that Russian leader Vladimir Putin had decided to mobilize throughout Russia in the past weeks. Immediately after Putin announced this mobilization decision, on Russian state television, Russia, which was already mixed and dominated by internal conflicts, was plunged into much more chaos. So how did this affect the Russian army? Even before the mobilization decree, the Russian armed forces were experiencing serious problems. There were communication breakdowns, arguments, and even armed fights between soldiers in the Russian army and senior Russian officers. Some Russian senior officers even tried to get their share of the war budget of the Russian armed forces. Many of the personnel in the Russian armed forces no longer believed in the war. This is exactly how Russia's army was before the mobilization. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, sought a certain way out because his army was in a shambles. Putin, who actually made the worst choice among these searches, decided to mobilize approximately 300,000 Russian citizens who have no military experience in order to increase the number of soldiers in the army. Many Russian volunteers recruited by Russian Guard regiments set out to fight in Ukraine. Among the Russian volunteers sent to Ukraine, there were many sick and elderly Russian citizens who did not meet the criteria for war. We think that the statements of the Russian Ministry of Defense that those who do not meet the military conscription will correct the mistakes of being recruited into the army have been forgotten. Now let's come to the volunteer Russian soldiers who went to Ukraine. Although the Russian army had serious problems in terms of military resources, it started to have serious problems with the recruitment of so many Russian volunteer citizens into the army. Volunteers arriving in Ukraine had to procure their own medical equipment and even blankets and pillows. While the Russian army is struggling with such shortcomings, Putin's effort to send Russian volunteers to Ukraine still reflects that he left these Russian citizens to die. Operations carried out with such an irregular army constantly push Russia one step further. The Russian administration, whose hands were tied, started to work on attack plans morning and evening in order to put an end to this advance of Ukraine. But the Ukrainian army, which destroyed every attack plan organized by the Russian administration, left both Russian troops and leader Putin helpless. After these unsuccessful Russian air attacks, the Russian army, which was expected to remain silent for a while, started to lose its dominance in Donetsk and Crimea. Now we understand that the mobilization of the Russian army did not change anything. Russian Defense Minister Shoigu's targeting of 300,000 Russian volunteers at the moment, and that this number will rise to 1 million over time, only caused fear and uneasiness in Russia. While Russian leader Vladimir Putin thought that he would have much more military power with the mobilization decision, he ignored the disorderly structure of the Russian army and the morale of the soldiers. Regardless of its military strength and number of soldiers, Russia continues to play with fire right now. With his mobilization decision, Russian leader Putin both offended his people and increased the number of casualties in the Russian army. So far, Russia's loss of troops since February 24 has exceeded 60,000. Although the Russian Defense Minister Shoigu tries to cover up the casualties, this is a very serious figure, and the number of volunteer soldiers in Russia will reach 1 million as the Russian mobilization decision continues to be implemented in the future. Just think, what do you think about 1 million Russian citizens who do not have military training and do not want to fight? What can they do on the Ukrainian front? The answer is very simple. 1 million Russian citizens could die for the narcissist and Stalinist idea of Russian leader Putin. Do not forget to follow us to be aware of the hot developments. Thanks for watching.